As humans, we are naturally driven by curiosity, but how far does it go without messing with our thoughts? I'm no one to put in random ideas in anyone's head, but hey. Are you aware of the fact that the following serial killers who have been ruling the world of nightmares are still on the loose? Here are 10 serial killers that were never found, but before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on my future videos. If you've already subscribed, welcome back. 10. Highway of Tears Killers. While the United States is generally thought of as the serial killer capital of the world, Canada has had its fair share of heinous murders, including more than a few that remain unsolved. Perhaps the most infamous of these is the Highway of Tears in British Columbia, a 720 kilometers stretch of Highway 16 between Prince George and Prince Rupert that has seen at least 18, and possibly as many as 40, predominantly Aboriginal women murdered between 1969 and 2011. Given that the murders span almost a 50-year period, it is believed that there have been multiple killers along the Highway of Tears, with only one suspect ever being implicated definitively in some way. The DNA of serial killer Bobby Fowler, who passed away in 2006 while in prison, was discovered on the body of Colleen Macmillan, who went missing in 1974. Unfortunately, investigators have concluded that it would have been impossible for Fowler to have committed most of the murders given his movements at the time, so it is likely that the other killer or killers remain at large. 9. The original Night Stalker. You've probably heard of Richard Ramirez, who was convicted in 1989 of 13 counts of murder, 5 counts of attempted murder, 11 counts of sexual assault, and 13 counts of burglary in the Los Angeles and San Francisco areas. Dubbed the Night Stalker, he was sentenced to death, but died of complications from B-cell lymphoma in 2013 before the sentence was carried out. That's not the Night Stalker I'm talking about here. Between 1979, about 5 years before Ramirez began committing his crimes, and 1986, an unknown assailant raped 45 people in Northern California, murdered 12 people in Southern California, and committed more than 120 burglaries. The rapes occurred first in several areas east of Sacramento. At least 50 women were assaulted between June 1976 and July 1979. At the time, the assailant was given the name the East Area Rapist. The Southern California murders began in 1979, although it wasn't until 2001 that they were linked to the Northern California rapes. Like the Zodiac Killer, the original Night Stalker, as this one has come to be known, frequently communicated with authorities and the public through a variety of media, mainly letters sent to the Sacramento Bee and phone calls. Although several suspects were investigated, whoever committed the crimes was never caught. 8. The February 9th Killer. In one of the most bizarre unsolved cases, the February 9th killer was known to have gained entry into his victims' homes by getting them to open their front door and forcing his way into their homes. He would do this every February 9th. His victims were all Hispanic women, including a 29-year-old woman who was 6 months pregnant. As of 2011, the case was declared cold as no evidence or witnesses could link a killer to the crimes. The police have said that they have a DNA profile of the killer, but it did not result in any matches, which means there's a good chance he will never be captured if he chooses never to strike again. 7. Bible John. Regarded as Scotland's biggest manhunt, the hunt for Bible John has turned up multiple suspects over the years, but his identity has never been proven in the 45-plus years since the murders of Patricia Docker, 25, Jemima McDonald, 32, and Helen Puttick, 29, occurred. All 3 victims had been beaten and raped prior to their murders and had all met the killer at the same Glasgow club, the Barrowland Ballroom. The key information in the case came from Helen Puttick's sister Jean, who had driven in the same taxi as her sister and the suspected killer the night she was murdered. Jean's information helped investigators form a psychological profile of the killer, and the man's many Bible references led to the Bible John nickname. Unfortunately, Jean passed away in 2010, and it's unlikely that police will ever be able to conclusively connect their prime suspect, convicted killer Peter Tobin, due to the deterioration of physical evidence. 6. The Long Island Serial Killer. It's not uncommon in cases of unsolved serial killings for the precise dates of activity and number of victims to remain difficult to pin down. Without a culprit from which to glean information directly, we're left with detective work and estimation. Such is the case with the Long Island serial killer. We think they were active between 1996 and 2010, and we believe there to be around 10 victims, but we don't know for sure. What we do know is that about 10 sets of remains were found between December 2010 and December 2011. Many of the victims had been strangled and wrapped in burlap sacks elsewhere, then deposited along Gilgo Beach in Long Island. Others were found along the Ocean Parkway, near Oak Beach, and near Jones Beach State Park. According to Pix 11, A set of legs discovered in Davis Park in 1996 may be the work of the same killer. What's even freakier is this: it's possible, likely, even, that the Long Island serial killer isn't the only person to have used Gilgo Beach as a dumping ground. Some of the remains found during the investigation were determined not necessarily to have been deposited there by the same person. Said Suffolk County District Attorney Thomas Spoda in 2011. According to ABC 7 Eyewitness News, it is clear that the area in and around Gilgo Beach has been used to discard human remains for some period of time. As distasteful and disturbing as that is, there is no evidence that all of these remains are the work of a single killer. 5. The West Mesa Bone Collector. In February 2009, the remains of 11 different women were found buried in a large desert area of Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was discovered that all the women were prostitutes, and the murders were believed to have been committed by a single serial killer known as the West Mesa Bone Collector. The victims ranged in age from 15 to 32 and all disappeared from 2003 to 2005. No official suspect has ever been identified, despite several violent men being connected to, or near, the bone dumping area. There's no way to connect any of them since there have been no witnesses or even a single strand of DNA. 4. The Doodler. As you can probably surmise, the Doodler got his nickname due to his practice of sketching his male victims prior to having sex with them and stabbing them to death. The killer operated in the San Francisco area from January 1974 to September 1975 and targeted the area's gay community, claiming 14 lives in the process while injuring 3 others. Due to the sensitive nature of identifying as homosexual at the time, the 3 surviving victims were reluctant to speak to police in fear of being outed, and as a result, there was very little information for authorities to go on. An unidentified young man was the primary suspect, but was never officially charged because none of the men would testify in court. 3. Colonial Parkway Killer. In the late 1980s, Virginian couples were targeted and attacked by a killer along the Colonial Parkway. 3 couples were found dead, a 4th couple's bodies were never found, although their car and some of their clothing was discovered. The 4th couple is presumed dead. The 3 couples and all 4 cars were found along the Colonial Parkway, usually only a few days after they went missing. In all cases, there were no signs of attempted robbery or sexual assault. A few theories about the killer have been proposed, including that the perpetrator was a police officer, or posed as one to mislead the victims. A retired Milwaukee detective, Steve Spingola, believes that the killings were committed by different killers, though a family member of one of the victims is suspicious of Spingola's conclusion and asserts that he merely sought to profit from covering the case. The murders remain under investigation to this day. 2. The Frankford Slasher. From 1985 to 1990 there were 9 murders in the Philadelphia neighborhood of Frankford where the victim was sexually assaulted and then brutally stabbed. It seemed clear that it was the work of a single serial killer, especially since several of the victims were reported to have been seen with a middle-aged white male shortly before their attacks. In a bizarre twist, after the murder of 8th victim, Carol Dowd, authorities arrested Leonard Christopher, a black male that worked at the fish market near the location of Dowd's murder. He didn't fit any witness description, and there was little to no evidence of his involvement, yet he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The case against Christopher actually being the Frankford Slasher became even less viable on September 6, 1990, months after Christopher had been arrested, when Michelle Denner was killed in the exact same way as the other victims. It would have been impossible for Christopher to commit her murder, so it seems as though the Frankford Slasher is still out there somewhere. 1. Freeway Phantom. In 1971, a killer began haunting the northeast neighborhood of Washington. 6 young black girls, between the ages of 10 and 18, were murdered within a year and a half of each other. Victims were abducted while walking to the store, to school, their job, or home. The killer would rape and strangle each victim before dumping the bodies along the highway. The second to last victim was found with a note. It read, "This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me if you can." It was signed Freeway Phantom. Police suspected an area gang in the string of attacks, yet no convictions were made. Since then, the case files have been lost, making solving the case nearly impossible today.